We will get started. We have our first presenter, and our first presenter is Kyle Hall, and he is working and he is using this project as a pathways vision for his visionary communication, communicating change, which is what we are definitely going through. Now, Kyle has been participating in online meetings for many years and in many forms. You might be interested to know, however, he is not an early adopter, even though he has a master's degree in computer engineering. He is not one of those people who's enamored with every new gadget and innovation. Kyle views computer hardware and software as tools, and one uses tools to get your job done. And as a carpenter will tell you, one also wants the right tool for the right job. Our clubs have a job to do, and that's to support our members. And in the middle of this virus crisis that we have, our job hasn't changed, just the circumstances under which we need to do it. Thus, change circumstance requires a change in tools. To talk to us tonight about tech requirements for participation from home, please help me welcome Kyle Hall.
Hi, everybody. In my home club, we had a person who, of course, when this crisis came up, she let us know that she is immune system compromised and she was going to be self-quarantining at home. And this was about a week and a half or so ago. My club meets weekly. So several of us thought we were going to miss her because she's a real spark plug for the meeting. And the meeting came and went, and several of us were saying, "Oh, it's too bad this person can't be here," and it's too and suddenly it struck me, it's like I am thick sometimes. It's like we have the technology to bring her into the meeting, so that not only can we enjoy her, but so that she is not home alone all the time. That the camaraderie and friendship that we build in our club, we can bring right into her home. And it occurred to me that it's not just about getting her into the meeting. It's about when people are isolating at home, whether they work from home, whether they're self-quarantining, whatever. Isolating can lead to loneliness, can lead to isolation, and we as Toastmasters need to reach out to our club members and let them know they're not alone and bring them in. So that's kind of what formatted this thinking and led me to think about how could we do this? How could we talk to not only my club, but all clubs about doing this? And that's what led to this meeting. Now I'm going to share my screen now so that you guys can see the slides I'm going to be using. Give me a second. There we go. I'm going to be talking about the technical requirements to participate from home. And if you think about it, most of us don't think there's any tech involved in a Toastmasters meeting. But imagine for a minute that you are a Cro-Magnon caveman, and you've been going to your Toastmasters meetings in your cave, and now suddenly you're being asked to go to a Toastmasters meeting that's in a building. Well, there's all this new technology you have to figure out, like doorknobs and maybe elevator buttons and chairs and things you're not used to. All these strange and scary technologies. Well, we can look at that and say that's ridiculous. And 5 years from now, we'll all look back at this and go and say, "Well, I was scared of a conference meeting. That's ridiculous." None of what we're going to talk about is rocket science. It's all doable. It's all understandable. Any person can manage it. Just takes a little practice and a little willingness to experiment. So what are the requirements if you want to bring a person home? Well, actually, I want to expand on the why a little bit. Why do we want to allow online participation? I already mentioned that some of our members are vulnerable and we want to allow them to attend our club meetings. In some cases, our club venues are going away. My club found out this morning that the meeting room we meet in, or the free meeting room we use every week, is no longer available to us until this crisis is over. It is shut down. They are not having anybody meet there for any reason. So our venue just went away this morning. We want to help people get past this isolation, but there's another reason we should think about participating online, which is as Toastmasters, we're about learning. We're about learning and communicating and learning about communicating and pushing our own personal boundaries. And this is an opportunity for us to push our personal boundaries. Okay, let's get into some of the meat of this. We have two options when we're thinking about communicating online. And the first option is the whole club goes online. And I want to talk about this first. You may think that that's actually more complex than just bringing a single member into the club, but it's not. The whole club going online is actually simpler. That's why I'm going to talk about it first. And here are the things you need. You need a high-speed internet connection of some kind. So you need a high-speed internet connection. You need a conferencing tool. We'll talk about those tools in a minute. And this is all out there on the web somewhere, or is the web. And then at home, some members connect on computers. Doesn't have to be a laptop, even though that's what my image is. Some members connect on phones. I was on a video meeting with a trio today, and the district director, Ginny, was on her cell phone. Smartphones are generally good enough for this kind of connection, and that's one of the reasons I say high-speed internet, high-speed connection, because Jenny's not coming across the internet; she's coming across the cell phone network. The application handles that all for us, invisible to us. Now you notice over here I have a computer and I have two members. One of the things we have in our club, we have a couple of people in our club who are not comfortable with technology. They either don't own a computer, or the computer they own is really old and probably won't run a conference tool, or the learning curve to try to get them up and working in a week is too steep. We'll get them up and working eventually. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to pair those people up with somebody who has a computer at home and is comfortable. So for instance, rather than going to our venue, they'll go to, Don, rather than going to the venue, we'll go to Judy's house and we'll sit beside Judy and participate in the meeting that way. So that's one of the things we can do to bring the whole club online. That's option one, whole club online. And what does your computer have to have if you're going to do that? Your computer has to have a microphone so you can talk and we can hear you. Your computer has to have sound so that when other people talk, you can hear them. It could be, your sound could be speakers, it could be earbud, it could be a headset like I'm wearing, whatever. It helps if your computer has a camera. Now tonight, Debbie, our president, she's working on a phone, doesn't have her camera, so you're not going to see her pretty face, but you get to see my pretty face because I have a camera. Okay, let's move on to option two. Oh, come on. One second, sorry about that. There we go. Option two, a hybrid meeting, which is some members are online and some members are in a room. Now, assuming your venue is still available to you, you might want to do this. And this is what I was thinking of originally when I was thinking about bringing that one member who is isolating into the club. So the right side of the screen is just the same. Members on phones, members on computers, they need the exact same thing. You need a high-speed connection, you need a conferencing tool. What's different over here? What's different over here is you have a meeting room with a bunch of members, depending upon what your local county will, let you meet. I think the state is saying, state of Washington is suggesting 10 members or less is fine, but it may vary from place to place. Over here, you need a computer with a microphone, you need a sound, you need camera. There's one other thing that's really helpful, and that's having a mobile camera with a microphone built in. And the reason I say that is if you just have a computer with a built-in microphone, sound, and camera, like a laptop. My laptop has a little camera built in and microphone. Well, now if I want to show the remote people a different view, like I can have the laptop facing towards the front of the room so they can see what's going on, but I can't see the laptop. And if somebody over there wants to speak, I have to take the laptop and pivot it over so they can see it. That's a pain in the butt. What's really helpful is to have an external camera with a microphone. And I'm going to go to my next slide. And this is an external camera with a microphone built in. It's a Logitech. There are other varieties out there. I just grabbed one off the internet. I'm not proposing this particular camera, but it's an example. And this camera has a long wire that ends in a USB port that plugs into the side of a computer. With this kind of camera, you can put your laptop in front of you, point the camera where you want it, and then if somebody moves or you need to, show somebody else, you can turn the camera. You can also, depending on the length of the cord, get it closer to a speaker. So it's useful to have. Now, let's talk about tools. Let's talk about the decisions you need to make. The first decision is your entire club going to go online, or you're going to do a hybrid meeting? As I mentioned, online, while being less comfortable emotionally for a lot of us, may actually be easier to implement. But for those people who are have either slow technology, poor technology, you may need to partner them up with somebody. And the other thing, of course, is when you're doing this, you need to be gentle on yourself. Set everyone's expectation. We're going to be experimenting. We're going to be playing with this. We're going to be trying it out. We're going to be learning over the next few weeks. After a couple of weeks of doing this, you'll know the tool you're using. People will get used to it. We'll figure out the wrinkles. The next decision you need to make is what tool are you going to use? Now, there are a bunch of conference tools out there. I'm going to talk briefly about these 6. I have a little bit of experience with all of them. 5 of the 6. So Skype, a lot of us have used Skype. Skype is not a bad tool for talking one-on-one, either just audio or audio and camera. But you start adding 2 or 3 or 4 people, especially with cameras involved, and Skype really burns up the computer resources. It starts slowing down. I've been on multiple conference calls where the image of the person just freezes. You can still hear them, but the image freezes. Skype is not reliable when you start getting into 8 people, 10 people, 12 people. At least that's been my experience. Now, your experiences may differ, but that's been my experience. So it's resource intensive. I don't think it can deal with a meeting. We tried, this sound advice, tried freeconferencecall.com. It's free. That's nice. We were very disappointed in the sound and image quality. We thought the sound and image quality we were getting was poor. And we tried doing a recording and we weren't happy with the recording. So we left that behind. I'm going to jump down to GoToMeeting, which is what we're using tonight. We're borrowing the district's GoToMeeting account because the district has given us permission to do that for these sorts of things, when we're offering something of benefit to other Toastmasters. In my opinion, it has great sound and image quality in general. Somebody was getting a little choppiness earlier, they put in the chat. I suspect that's their own local internet, but in general, we get good sound, good image, nice recordings. We do have to pay for it. That's the downside. You have to pay for it. It's about $12 a month. My club just bought Zoom. We just paid for a subscription to Zoom. My experience, I used Zoom several years ago when our 2 districts, when the Alaska clubs were added to District 32. I went up to Alaska and did some training, and we used Zoom, and it was a nightmare. But I don't think, maybe some of that problem was Zoom, but a lot of it was just the underlying internet infrastructure wasn't sound. I mean, we were connecting Fairbanks and Palmer and Anchorage and Juneau and Ketchikan, and in something that complex, things break. We use Zoom. My club used Zoom last Tuesday night, first time. We did a hybrid meeting, and it worked great. And it's a simple tool. I mean, there are some things you can do with it. You can use. There are things you can do which will make it more complex, make it subtle things you can do. But it's for just using it for a conference call. It's a simple tool. Our club is paying $15 a month for that. I'll come back to Zoom in a second. WebEx, I have not had any experience with WebEx. It's $13.50 a month. Maybe somebody else has a lot of experience with it. I can't speak to whether it's good, bad, whatever. Uber Conference is free, but you're limited to 10 attendees. So if you're of an 8-person club, you can use Uber Conference as long as you don't want any guests. One of the other things I should mention is Zoom has a free option, but you're limited to 40 minutes. And our club meeting generally goes an hour and a quarter or so. So 40 minutes won't work. Some of the other tools out there, WebEx has a free option. You're limited to 40 minutes. So if you have a meeting that goes longer than 40 minutes, you're going to end up paying a subscription fee. Now, here's the thing I want you to watch for. The district is debating a decision right now. And by right now, I mean today I discussed it with the trio, and we're going to be talking about it probably at the district executive committee meeting on Saturday. We are discussing buying a bunch of Zoom accounts and basically loaning them out to the division directors, and the division directors could then loan them out to their clubs as needed for their clubs to do meetings. So I'm not going to guarantee. Don't count on that. It may not happen, but it's a possibility, and that the district may provide free access to Zoom accounts. So we'll see. The third decision you need to make, and this is the really important one: what will be our attitude towards this change? I know there are people who are scared. I know there are people who have trepidations about doing things online. One member said, well, I can't, I can go online, but I can't do any speeches. I'm doing the presentation mastery path and I can't. And I'm like, I say, I'm going to have a conversation with that person aside, because he can still do speeches online and he can still advance on this path. I know another person who just said, well, if we go online, I'm not going to attend. Okay. That's disappointing, and I'm sorry. And I hope his club chooses to do a hybrid meeting so he can still attend. But really, we need to look at this as we're Toastmasters. We're about learning. We're about trying something new. We're about taking our box and making it a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And we do that by doing something that's scary. And maybe this is scary, or maybe it's just challenging, but it's okay. We're going to try it. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, try it again. And we'll get better, and we'll get better. And 6 months from now, this will be old hat, and we'll be wondering why it was a big deal. So that's what I have to say about the tech requirements for participating from home. And I'm going to hand control back to Joanna. Joanna?
I'm here. So
Okay.
Thank you, Kyle. I wanted to give it a few seconds so that you could transition over to me and make me the presenter, because we still have your slides up.
I'm trying to take care of that.
I'll go ahead.
Oh, there it is.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Kyle, for sharing that. That was a lot of information about different resources that are available. And all I can say is, for those of you that have not had the opportunity to go out and try GoToMeeting, Zoom, or any of the other options that Kyle talked about, there is free opportunities for you to actually download it, see if you like it, and if you don't, then you don't have to pay anything to actually use it until you decide. But I will say that there are a couple of things that I do pay for, and Zoom is probably one of my favorite things. GoToMeeting is my second, and just because I have more opportunities to break things in Zoom, which is what I like. So thank you again, Kyle. I appreciate that. And Kyle will be part of our question and answer period. So if you have any questions, we will have a question and answer time frame after all three of our presenters have presented. And then we ask that you put most of those in chat, or again, if you raise your hand, just so that we can recognize and make sure that we get to all the questions that we can. So thank you, Kyle. I just need to set up for our second presenter. There we go. And our second presenter is Jolene Ashker, and Jolene is coming to us from District 2. She's coming to us from District 2, and there's quite a bit of insight and information that she has garnered over the last 2 years as a area director, and then also as somebody who has set up a club that is exclusively online. Excuse me. So, my apologies. Allergies are always in season. So, in 2016, Jolene became a Toastmaster with the Kirkland Eclectics, and she was their secretary, and she won the Most Inspirational Speaker in 2017 and the Best Evaluator in 2018. In 2018, she was invited to be the Vice President of Education and start the Digital Transformation Toastmasters Club. Although she was terrified of saying yes because she hated technology, that's exactly why she accepted the challenge. Jolene is the current president of Digital Transformation, a distinguished club with a dream team of dedicated officers and members from around the world. She is also the director of 6 clubs in Kirkland this year, so she's a busy woman. Because of this digital learning opportunity, now Jolene joyfully enjoys meeting with her clients on Zoom and creates videos for them to escape mediocrity and create an exceptional life, especially now with the quarantine experiences. Help me welcome Jolene Ashker.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. This digital journey was completely unexpected for me. And I say that because if there is a video that I created because I'm on the digital task force for the district, and I literally show myself with my flip phone looking like a dinosaur, because that's where I was not too long ago. Saying yes to being the president of Digital Transformation has really helped me up-level my game. I was asked to share some of the challenges as well as the opportunities, first of all, for having an online club. So that's what I'll cover first. I have 5 points, and then I'll go into another topic. The items that I'll discuss tonight, the first is the sense of disconnection and separation. The second item is disengagement. The third is fear. The fourth is body language. And the fifth is lighting and sound issues. Okay, number 1. The first challenge that we had, and we noticed this over the course of time, is there was a sense of disconnection and separation, because it's different meeting like this and keeping the community feel and vibe than it is meeting in person. Here are some things that we've done that I hope will help you now for however long this lasts. The first thing we did was we began to go on our meetings 15 minutes early consistently. We invite guests to come early, we invite members to come early so that we can absolutely keep the social aspect going. Our offers make a concerted effort to reach out to the guests, to say hello, to ask them why they came to the meeting, and to socialize, to iron out any tech issues. And then now what we're doing is we're mingling after the meeting. So there's a lingering that's occurring so that we can continue to create that community vibe. The second thing that we're doing is we're giving each new member a mentor. That helps create that cohesiveness that's lacking from an online community. It also builds some camaraderie, especially for the newer people with technology. The third thing that we do in this area is the beauty of this is that we get to connect to people around the world. We have people in South Korea. We have people around the United States. We've had speakers from Australia. That's the beauty of this thing. And we get to hear about their communities and their families and their traditions. It's really quite beautiful. And to really look at it that way, as Kyle had said, it's all about the attitude. And the fourth thing that we do is I send out president's videos just to say hello to people, to remind people that we're here, to congratulate people on different awards, so that I'm also in touch, and I encourage my officers to do the same. The second item is how to keep members disengaged, because this is a different kind of community. Well, I realized that this was a challenge in November, or at the beginning of my term, if you will, back last year. And in November, we started a PR initiative. The PR initiative is to bring people from outside of the district. This keeps our new members coming in, coming back, and it also filters new members into our club. Because let's face it, people can join from anywhere in the world. How exciting is that? That said, we had Jim Kakachi come, the past international president, speak. Craig Valentine will be coming to our club, past world champion of public speaking. He will be at our club on Monday, which is 150 people online. We also, part of keeping members engaged is reaching out for that personal connection. We have so much hands-on personal connection constantly with members who haven't been at meetings. The final thing we do in this area is we're strategic. We have strategic planning. Our officers' meetings are monthly. We are diligent about thinking out of the box. How can we bring this community together, keep people engaged, and stay abreast of the technology issues? Third item, fear of technology, which was my fear. I can honestly share with you it's not anymore. I enjoy it. It is a challenge. I wasn't supposed to be sitting in front of you like this. I was supposed to be over there. And Kirkland Eclectics is on my computer over there. It was supposed to be reversed up until about a half hour before this meeting. And then we did a huge change. You weren't supposed to be seeing the lighting the way it is because I've improved it. These are all a work in progress. To overcome these fears, I really believe in educating our members. We have educational moments. Every meeting, we begin with an educational moment from an officer. It's 1 to 3 minutes. We talk about technology, about lighting, about Zoom, about speaking, whatever it is that we hear our members need help with. Again, I'm going to come back to comforting and reassuring people that if you even came to a Toastmasters meeting, you can do this. This is a piece of cake after a while. It just takes practice like anything else. Mentoring, another key to helping people disengage from the fear. The third thing is we have amazing dedicated officers in my club. They reach out to members. We are constantly engaged with people to help really dispel any fears and help them be as comfortable as possible. Finally, we are cutting edge. This is really great stuff. This event, the fact that we're doing this is cutting edge. And I can tell you from other keynoters that I'm talking to, this is the wave of the future, which means you're in the right place. Finally, the fourth point is body language. It's just something to be aware of. Body language is limited. If you're standing, notice what you're seeing, my chest and my abdomen. Notice when I'm sitting, it's a whole different vibe. Lighting, all of these things take practice. They don't just happen overnight. So body language is different. Energy is different when you stand from when you sit. And it's something to be aware of. It's a phenomenal skill to develop as far as speaking is concerned. What works online might not work offline and vice versa. So you're becoming more adept Toastmasters and speakers and leaders. The fifth point is lighting. Lighting and sound issues. This was another obstacle. And it still is. But that's why we meet early to iron that out for each member. And that's why we stay late to answer questions. And again, I think it's all a work in progress, but those are some of the things that those are some of the obstacles we've come up against. Those are some of the solutions. Now I'm going to the next piece, which is etiquette and protocol, challenges and opportunities. There are 6 points that I'll be covering. One is lack of consistency in how meetings are run. 2, not why we don't clap, and talking about noise levels. 3, timing devices. 4, use of the chat box. 5, distractions in the background. And 6, it's a bonus. I'll tell you at the end what it is. All right. The first, lack of consistency in how the meetings are run and role descriptions. This is why we have what we have in our club that is the solution is, again, we have educational moments that are run by officers. And what that does is it gives some continuity to roles. It gives some continuity to how the meetings are run. We post special online role descriptions that the SAA has solely for online, for protocol, for online, that the SAA says before, as they open a meeting. We also post all of our documents on our website. That way, new members have access to all of the information that we use, so that if there's any question whatsoever, and the members have any questions, they can actually look online to have resources so that there is more consistency. The second thing is clapping and muting. It's really critical. As you can see, it was so beautifully done here that we don't clap because that's loud and it's distracting. And so that's why this is actually a sign language for the deaf. And it adds some excitement, it adds some fun to the meeting. So this was another challenge and etiquette that we've addressed. The third thing is our timing devices. So when I say there was a lot of inconsistency with timing devices, people were like, we want one timing device. There's no way to do that when you've got so many members using so many different phone apps. So what we suggest is you get creative. Like tonight, they have cards showing me the red. Do I have a few more minutes, by the way? Can I finish up, or would you like me to stop?
No, please finish up.
Okay, thank you. So notice how creative. She has different colored cards. I've had people show different colored fruits, a green kiwi, a yellow banana, a red apple. Get creative. It doesn't have to be rigid, and it isn't one size fits all. That's the solution. The fourth tip, the use of the chat box. Oof. This was learned the hard way. I say this because at first, the SAA was not starting the meeting by saying, please be discerning about how you're using the chat box. That was not said because we didn't know. Now we basically say, please use the chat box only to give the speaker positive feedback or constructive feedback. And put the word of the day, if you're doing that, the grammarian's doing that, put that in the chat box. Otherwise, please refrain from comments. Why? We were getting really derogatory comments that were very undermining to everybody involved. It defeated the Toastmaster message. And quite frankly, I think that there was a safety behind being on a computer and not really being able, I could say what I think. No, please don't. Please don't. Please be respectful of each other. And so the other thing that we had noticed was not only people were they being disparaging, but they were telling jokes. And it's like, this was very distracting in our chat box. We really wanted to stay focused. So that's what the SAA begins with at the beginning of the meeting. They're just gentle reminders and guidelines. The fifth is distractions in the background. Why am I talking about a problem of distractions in the background? One of our members, our newer members, is not as well versed with online. And during the middle of her presentation, she said, "Oh, excuse me, I have to go take the dog out." What? Okay, so if you were standing in front of a room and you were talking to people, would you just randomly go take the dog out? Probably not if you're a good speaker. So remembering these things. Another one of our presenters was talking to her husband in between giving her speech. Again, not good Toastmasters etiquette. I'm saying this because you want to be reminded that this is still a professional Toastmasters environment. We want to treat it as such. And what this helps is what Kyle said as well. The Toastmaster learns how to focus in a different way, yes, but also needs to be cognizant of their environment. The sixth problem that we had, and I say this jokingly, but I mean it sincerely. We had an opportunity to get together, and I had seen all of our members basically online for months, except the one in South Korea and some of the other countries. But we had an in-person meeting one time where everybody came. It was for a recent contest. We all decided to get together for the contest, and I literally didn't recognize the members because they look so different online. And let me tell you, everybody is taller in person than they are here. So when I looked up at somebody, it surprised me because I had no idea she was that tall. These are just some of the surprises, the differences between digital and in-person, some of the challenges, and I call them opportunities. Finally, you are all most welcome to come to our digital meeting as guests. We've been having guests regularly on Monday nights simply to observe. This week, on Monday from 7 to 8:30, we do have Craig Valentine as a guest speaker. It's a special meeting. You need to RSVP. If you'd like to come, you are most welcome. And if you're not able to, you are welcome to come thereafter if you'd like to see how this works. Thank you for your time, for allowing me to go over time as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene, for your 6 points and addressing things that are a crucial component to a meeting, whether that is in person or online or a hybrid version of it, and understanding courtesy and etiquette and how we speak to each other, and especially in this digital timeline. So I did have a follow-up question for you, ma'am. So I assume that SAA is the Sergeant at Arms, but I could be incorrect on that?
Yes. Sorry for using that. I'm sorry for using that. What is it? The word's not coming to me.
Well, it's not necessarily an acronym because an acronym spells a word, but most of us use that, the phrase acronym.
Yes, it was an acronym. Sorry for using that acronym, and I thought everybody knew who it was. But yes, is the Sergeant at Arms. Yes. Okay. Thanks for asking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My apologies for stepping on you, too. That's an example of what not to do when someone else is speaking, is stepping on them. So, but I'm a Sergeant at Arms for one of my clubs, so absolutely I understand what the SAA was, but I just wanted to clarify that we weren't talking about another club. All right. Thank you, Jolene, for that. I appreciate that, especially coming from District 2 and giving us some insights. And there's a few things that I'm definitely going to take away from your presentation. Our next presenter this evening is James O'Farron, and James O'Farron is serving as the area director for Area 35 for the second time in a row. And he is always a joy to have in our meetings, and we have had him, I think, since the beginning of our Toastmaster year this year and a few meetings last Toastmaster year as a guest. And so we have asked James to give us his input and his feedback as a participant from the online and what the perspective is. Because most of us join meetings in person and we don't understand what it means to join from the online perspective. Please help me welcome James O'Farron.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me tonight. I'd like to begin with a quote from 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. Now, there's a lot of things we can draw from that theologically, but the pertinent point to Toastmasters is that we're not going to be able to communicate and understand each other effectively until heaven. It doesn't matter what form of medium we're working with, whether it's letters or video or in person, there's always going to be limitations, and things are going to be subject to misinterpretations, to the filters and the biases and technical issues that plague us anytime we're communicating between flawed humans who make mistakes. And each different form of communication has its own challenges, its own unique issues that it works with, and unique opportunities. A letter is different from a poem, which is different from a book or a song. Emails are different from texts. Blog articles are different from full-on essays or theses. A phone call is different from a voicemail, which is yet again different from an audiobook. If you're doing a video blog, a vlog, that's going to be different from if you're doing a Facebook Live video, which is a very unique form of communication. And if you're just recording a face chat with somebody else, that's going to be even more unique. And then you also have, on top of all of that, you have different personalities. I remember at the last summer TLI, Cindy did a talk on how different personalities communicate, and she used emails as an example, even though we frequently tell personalities differently by their tone of voice frequently. But she talked about emails and how different and unique those are, and how communication is challenging between different people of different personality types. Of course, there's different languages, there's different accents you can talk with that can be completely unintelligible even if you're speaking the same language. And there's different areas of expertise. If I'm talking about how to convert a CSV to a JSON, and I'm talking about doing it over an API, that may seem really simple to somebody who does web development, but to most people, it's complete gibberish. There's different levels of expertise that different people have, and they bring different perspectives because of that. Through all these things, the temptation as we interact is to look at all the obscurities, all these challenges, but success looks beyond those, I think. I personally work professionally 100% remotely. I coach people over video chat and through screen sharing to help them with their coding skills. I've joined on and been a guest for Sound Advice for many months, enjoyed every single time, and kind of saw through some of the ups and downs and hurdles that they've interacted with. My own club just had our first online meeting, so I helped to orchestrate that one. And so I've had a lot of experience with meeting online. And so I'm going to be talking about some of the devils that are in the details when it comes to what it means to interact and engage via a remote meeting. So first off, one of the things that Kyle mentioned, which I had also was going to bring up, is that there's two kinds of remote meetings. There's what I call a hybrid meeting, and there's a pure meeting. And those are true from a technical standpoint, where sometimes it's just easier for everybody to go on remote as opposed to having to try and create like an interface between the two that can connect them. But there's also a bit difference in how they feel. My experience in coming to the Sound Advice Toastmasters meeting, which was hybrid until tonight, was that there can be a feeling of a power differential, a sense of exclusion that needs to be overcome. I remember how this can be affected by very nuanced things. When we were in one room, the camera that I was looking down from was up near the ceiling, and they all had to look up to see me. And I was kind of looking down and seeing all these little people scattered around. It felt kind of like I was a supervisor in a sci-fi movie or something. And it was a very a very distancing effect. It was weird. Then when they moved to a different room, and it was set at the same level as everybody else, and I kind of could imagine, I have a really good imagination, that I was just sitting around the table, just another one of the people, just looking through a little window for some reason. And it created a connection, it lowered the power differential that was able to create connection. But it's not just where you place the video. There's always needs to be a certain extra effort that needs to be done to overcome things. You need to not be shy. You need to be able to be present mentally despite that social distance. And like the other person was saying, I completely blanked on your name, Jolene, sorry, that separation that you need to engage in and not be distracted by things happening behind you. You need to be present mentally and not be worried about, multitasking and all kinds of things like that. A purely remote meeting puts everybody kind of on an equal footing, but that kind of makes everybody be similarly handicapped. You don't have this group of smiling faces and that energy that they connect synergistically with each other. A swarm of boxes isn't quite the same. This is where the chat can be useful in some circumstances, but again, it takes intentionality and a sense of mental and emotional engagement. One of the aspects of that is eye contact. I can't look at you guys in the eye at the same time as I'm seeing your eyes. There's not that immediate visceral connection. I also can't look at my notes and make eye contact with you either. It's a very distancing effect. And also, it drains your energy. For myself, when I'm standing in front of an audience, I'm listening to them all. I'm watching all their face expressions, and I'm able to draw energy from that. And I have to work harder to engage with you and treat the camera as a person in order to be able to actually connect viscerally with each person, which is also very challenging if you're doing humor. You can tell a joke and everybody else is muted, so you can't tell whether it worked or not. So it's difficult. You have to watch people's faces and then you're not making eye contact at the same time. It's difficult, it's a challenge. I've worked remotely, as I said, for a long time. I've also interacted with remote friends for a very long time. I used to actually call myself a cyborg at one point because I was so locked into online interaction and I didn't have any real connections outside of it. I got good at it, but as I went to Toastmasters and connected more in person, I developed communication skills to another tier. And I came to believe that online communication can be likened to eating ice cream with a sock on your tongue. It's challenging. It's difficult, but there's ways around that. I mean, yes, the wealth of social cues that are accessible in person are muted. They're hidden, literally. You have to work harder to dig for the gold of human connection. You have to engage and work in order to make that same connection. It's like a blind person learning to rely more on hearing. We need to focus our skills to become more active listeners and speakers on both sides, using what's available to its fullest extent in order to be able to compensate for these difficulties. Now, as a nerd, I'm an early adopter. I love things. I like jumping on board. So it may seem kind of a downer in a sense, but I'm also realistic. But I'm also optimistic because the end goal is not simply to create a lesser copy of in-person communication here. That's not the goal. We're never going to win that way. But think of a poem. A poem is a restricted form of written communication. It's very limited. But despite its restrictions, it's not merely a lesser version of, say, a novel. It's another kind of art. It's different, it's focused, and it gains beauty because of it. If we put in the effort as presenters and as observers, we can elevate online communication to a new art form with its own distinct advantages. It just takes a little bit more work. Thank you.
Right, that was excellent. James, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think I'm going to take a different viewpoint of poems away. Normally, I felt a little restricted by a poem, but absolutely, I love the analogy, the metaphor, the simile, however we want to phrase that terminology for what you presented to us. But thank you again, James, for giving us a perspective from the online individual. Now we are going to move into our question and answer period. So in order to prepare for that, first and foremost, I would like to ask those of you online if you would share your camera, because I can't see if you're, and the reason that I do that, if you raise your hand or if you give me some sign that you want to ask a question, or you can actually go into, and let me just set this up really quickly. Be the presenter. If you go into your chat version, and at the bottom where it says send to, you can either send it to everyone or organizers only, and then that email will come direct, that chat will come directly to me so I can read off your questions and queue you up for the next one. So you have two options. You can either share your screen or use the chat to ask your question. All right. We do have 30 minutes on the clock, and Lori will be our phenomenal timer for this evening, as she has been successful all meeting long with her cards. So with that, does anyone have a question that they would like to ask? Not all at once. And normally Mary is my first person that asks a question, so we're gonna try and give somebody else the opportunity.
Judy is raising her hand.
Excellent. Judy, what is your question, ma'am? And I can't hear you. Let me make sure.
Judy, type it into the chat.
Oh, there you go. So I unmuted everybody. If you would mute yourselves. So we're going to ask. Judy, I'm having some trouble hearing you. Can you chat? Can you send it into the chat? Okay. So we're going to try something different.
Judy, why don't you email me the question to me, and I'll bring it back up in a minute.
Oh, that's great. I was just going to have her text me on my phone. So while we're getting that, so Matthew Hartman has a question, and it is, how do you share presentation slides and PowerPoint on platforms like GoToMeeting? Kyle, you shared your slides. Would you respond to that?
Sure. In my case, so whatever tool you're using for slides, PowerPoint, a Keynote on a Mac, I was using Google Slides, whatever tool you use, if you can display the slides on your screen, then you can display it on Zoom or GoToMeeting or WebEx, because all of these tools allow you to share your screen. And that's what we were doing. Joanna was the presenter at the start of the meeting. When she introduced me, she made me presenter, and as presenter, I can share my screen. So I brought up my slides, I clicked present, and I shared it, and so you guys could see my slides, and I could progress through them. That's how you do it. It's not very difficult.
And I can add too, as far as Zoom, it's exactly the same thing. There's a share button at the bottom of your screen. You simply click on it as the presenter, and it brings up your slides, and you can go to presenter with PowerPoint. It's the same thing.
One other thing to note on that, because I've run into this I use Zoom exclusively when I'm working and screen sharing with people, is that you get an option of what window to select. You can select your whole window or a particular application like your browser or a particular tab. And so typically it's easiest to actually have your PowerPoint presentation in one particular tab, share that one, and then you can actually go look and actually do other things on your computer, and they won't see everything that you're doing. They'll actually just see that particular tab, and it makes it a lot easier for you to share that particular slide. Though you have to remember to change the slide, because if you're not looking at it, then you can get lost, and they'll have to remind you to change it over.
All right, excellent.
Joanna, yes? I have Judy's question.
Okay, go ahead.
Judy's question is, does Zoom allow the organizer to mute all attendees?
As a user of Zoom, and I think a few of us have mentioned, especially the presenters that have said that they've used Zoom. So James, since you're an exclusive user of Zoom, would you like to share?
I have not actually had to mute my clients before, so I actually don't know the answer to that one.
It's Bob. I use Zoom fairly often, and yes, you can mute everybody just like we've been doing on GoToMeeting tonight.
I figured
Yeah.
you'd be able to.
Yes, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
All right. So I think, let me make sure that I get my next question. So the next question comes from, so Judy, is that good? Can you give me a thumbs up? Yes? All right. Kathy Feather has a question. How do you overcome the hard feedback, especially when some members' video is sluggish and members are working on humorous speeches? So Kyle, and I know Kyle and James quite well when it comes to humorous components of speeches, and they probably are the biggest users of that. Would you share?
Do you want to go first, Kyle? I have a thought, but
No, you go first.
okay. One thing I noticed is, like I commented, it is really challenging because typically when you're a humorous speaker, you want to get feedback from the audience to know whether a particular joke succeeded, and then roll off it or abandon it and take another tack. And so when there's lag, it's a bit more difficult. But one thing that I was doing is I make sure that even though I have my notes up, I make sure that I can see the other people in the view with the webcam, so I can kind of get a certain amount of seeing their laughter. Even if I can't hear it, it's easier for me to kind of get a gauge of whether it's successful or not, and try to anticipate and then again practice more, I suppose, because it is a bit difficult because you don't know how it's going to fly in the last moment. Don't know if that answered the question or not, but that was just some of my thoughts.
Yeah. Kyle, for humor?
So one of the things, doing a meeting online does add that extra challenge of the remoteness or the distance can make it difficult to perceive whether the audience is really liking what you're doing. It doesn't make it impossible though. As James said, we can watch carefully. We have to be looking at all the different images of people. One of the things that online lends itself to is visual humor. So for instance, I was Toastmaster for a meeting a few months ago in my club, and my theme was, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I had a bunch of true visual jokes. They were images of people doing stupid stuff. And I would set it up with a line, and then which of course was, "Are you sure you want," and end with the "sure you want to do that." And then I flip up the image of people doing stupid stuff. And it's amazing how many images you can find on the internet pretty quickly of people doing stupid stuff. That would lend it, while I did that in person in my club, that would lend itself to a Toastmasters meeting, an online Toastmasters meeting, pretty well. So you can morph your humor to work better online. The other thing, of course, you can do is if you prep your evaluator in advance, especially if you choose an evaluator who's going to be good at evaluating your humor. Not every evaluator is good at that, but pick somebody in your club who's good at evaluating humor. Ask that person to evaluate you, and ask them in particular to look at your humor and give you the feedback. Yeah, it's not immediate feedback. Maybe it's a half an hour, 2 hours later, but you get the feedback.
Okay, thank you for that. So the question was in reference to getting feedback, and I hope that we understood your question the correct way. If not, you can go ahead and follow that up, Kathy, in case we didn't do that right. So we do have a couple of questions in the queue. The next one in the queue is from Lori Zobrowski, and it's in reference to the use of Hangouts. So Google has a system very much for office meetings, and James has his hand up for Google Hangouts. James, please.
Yeah, so our first club meeting we did using Google Meet, which is basically Hangouts, but paid. If you're using regular Hangouts, I think there's a cap on how many you can use it for. But if you have Google Meet, which is the Google Hangouts, if you're paying for Google Suite, like if you have like a Google domain name or something like that, it comes with that. So it's actually pretty inexpensive. but it works. You do not have all the controls. You don't have like the mass mute, you don't have the rooms, and the chat is really kind of painful. It doesn't get recorded, and people who are coming in new don't see past chats. There's no way to like message an individual or the presenter. So if you're trying to vote for something, can't do it. You have to message independently, separately. So it's very bare bones, very minimalistic. We didn't have any issues with quality or sound, I don't think, but overall it was minimally functional. That was my experience.
All right. And I also have some experience with Google Hangouts, and it was harder for people to call in, and unless everybody has the same system, it's not user friendly in that component. So everybody has to have Google Hangouts to be able to use it. For Zoom, you don't have to download the application. For GoToMeeting, you don't have to necessarily download it to your system or create an account. You can just join, and that is the benefit of that versus Google Hangouts. So again, it would have to be everybody who has that connection. So we have another question in our comment, and there's Peggy Rose has a question. And if you have a question, you don't have to tell us that you have a question, just ask your question in the chat and we'll definitely try to get to it. So
can I just say I'm pretty sure that you actually do have to download Zoom on your computer, because as a guest, I'm not being able to get on Zoom meetings on one of my laptops.
Okay. As a guest of this meeting or guest of other meetings? Because we use GoToMeeting for this.
No, but I have a temporary computer that I've been using, and I'm a guest, and I don't have the main password, and I cannot put Zoom. I can't go to a Zoom meeting on that computer.
I'm unsure, to be perfectly honest. So that's a question I'll have to take away. But in my experience, I have not had to download the Zoom applications to call in, to just, if I'm sent the link to it, all I do is click on the link. So I haven't had that experience. James or Kyle, having used Zoom?
I've been able to use it in the browser without the app at all when needed. So even without an account, I've been able to do that as needed. You have to have somebody else hosting it, but
That's what we did on Tuesday night. Was I hosted the Zoom meeting, and I simply gave, excuse me, I simply gave the link to my club members, which they could then put in a browser or click on it and come join the meeting. They didn't need a password, and I don't think they had to download any piece of software to their computer. It may vary from computer to computer too. It may vary with what version of Windows you're using, or Apple, and what version of browser you have.
or
Yes.
which browser?
Or which browser.
All hell
Yes.
Chrome.
So I'm wondering, because this is Peggy Rose here, and I am wondering, because I have Zoom on my laptop and I tried to log in and I used the GoToMeeting link, the event number, and it would not identify it. It wouldn't find it. It wouldn't do anything. So I had to go onto my phone, download Zoom onto my phone, or GoToMeeting. So it makes me wonder, are they two different things?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Oh.
So they are two different software systems. So you do need to, I'm getting a lot of feedback somewhere.
I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. My apologies. I'm getting a lot of feedback somewhere. And sometimes if you have your phone and your computer on at the same time, you'll hear the echo or the feedback from that. So Peggy, as you're asking, they are two different systems. And they're not used interchangeably. You're either on Zoom or you're on a GoToMeeting or the free meeting or any of the other systems, but they are separate systems, and you just need to be careful with which ones you have loaded. I have both of them on my system and on my phone, and I don't have any issues with making that connection. Kyle, having just recently downloaded Zoom, have you had any of those concerns?
I'm sorry, you have to repeat the end of that question.
Have you had any of the same concerns since you've used both GoToMeeting and Zoom? And I take it you've downloaded both of them to your system.
Yes, I have both of them on my computer. I access them differently just to make sure I don't make a mistake like that. For instance, when I access GoToMeeting, I go up to my browser, I browse down, I select from my favorites, and but I have a Zoom icon on my computer screen, so I access the two of them a little differently, and I do that deliberately so that I don't make a mistake and click on the wrong tool, thinking I'm going to end up in a meeting. Now for Peggy Rose, Sound Advice uses GoToMeeting, so we just use GoToMeeting. The district, for most of our district meetings and DECMs and district council meetings, we use GoToMeeting. So if you're going to connect into those, you have to use GoToMeeting. You don't have to necessarily download it onto your computer. You can click on the link, and usually it'll ask you if you want to open up in a browser, and you can do that. Similar thing for Zoom. If your club is using Zoom, all your members will use Zoom. You have to access it via Zoom, even if you're opening it in a browser.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is put GoToMeeting on my laptop because I'm just curious now. When everybody kept saying Zoom, I thought it was one thing, Zoom. And what you're saying is it's two separate things.
Actually,
Yes.
Joanna, Peggy Rose, there are a dozen different conferencing tools. Zoom is one tool. GoToMeeting is a tool. FreeConferenceCall.com is a tool. Skype is a tool. There are dozens of others. I just mentioned 6 of the more popular ones in my short presentation. And which tool you use varies widely and depending upon what you're trying to do.
Well, I understand that. That part I do understand. The part that confused me was that in the email it said Zoom. So if it says Zoom, then I assume that means Zoom, not GoToMeeting. And maybe I'm just, I'm a Neanderthal when it comes to this type of thing.
Can I address that to this, Joanna? Because I'm the one who sent the email.
So Kyle, let's finish this up and then we'll move on to the next question because I just want to make sure that we don't get too in the loop of just one. And then we can also send out additional information of how they separate.
Okay.
Please go ahead, Kyle.
I sent out the email today via Eventbrite. I sent out the email today that gave you your GoToMeeting link. And above that in the email were a couple of links to our agenda and also to a couple of documents I've drafted. Now, the documents I've drafted are for my home club. My home club is using Zoom. So I have best practices for using Zoom to run a meeting. That's one of the documents. The reason I shared that is I haven't seen anybody write up a description of, well, how does the timer's job change if I'm using one of these conference tools? And I was writing this specifically for Zoom for my home club, not for Sound Advice. We may actually write up another version for Sound Advice and GoToMeeting, but they're very similar. The language of each tool changes slightly, but not a great deal. That's why I shared it, and I apologize for the confusion.
All right. So thank you, Kyle, for that. I know that I'm missing somebody in the line, and Gary had a question. There we go. Gary, how do you get it evaluated for a manual? And you're asking legacy. And we are still working towards legacy until the 30th of June. So the question is how do you get evaluated for a manual in the legacy system for speeches? For my presenters, or actually, you know what? Let me see.
So is the question there, like, because I know like when you have the manuals, you have your manual that has the evaluation in the physical book, and you have to hand it to the evaluator to evaluate it. But if you're online, you can't do that. Whereas with Pathways, you can just, each person can download their own evaluation. Is that like The difference
Right,
there.
I believe that is the question. How do you either scan it? How do you share that information to get your evaluation from a
There
legacy
are
manual?
scans of the evaluations from the manuals, or you can make your own. I would recommend that the club have on file like scans of all the different evaluations for the different manuals, and have those available if people are going through legacy, and then they can send those out to the evaluators and then email it back so they can transcribe it. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't address that because everybody in our club is on Pathways. So we don't actually have that issue at all.
Yeah.
You
And
can
that's
do a
the benefit.
Google search for all of the evaluations for all of the legacy manuals, and then you just get the PDF, and you can send the PDF and say you're doing, you know, project 2 or project 4 or whatever.
Right.
The PDF.
One of the other things that we found, and as a vice president of education, the other thing that we found is sometimes we'll just do a sheet of paper, write down evaluation, and they add that to their manual, and that's part of their evaluation. And then we also make sure that they ask us specifically what they're looking for evaluations, and that helps. So that's in reference to our asking those. Now, Lori, are we at 30 minutes, 20 minutes? We are at 20 minutes. So we have 10 more minutes, and we have 2 more questions in the queue. I just need to make sure that I'm tracking all of these. So Mary Morrison has a question, and I'm going to open this up to our panelists. What, if anything, do you ask guests to join, and then how do you manage the process? And actually, Jolene, since you're an exclusively online meeting, I guess this would be most suited to you for getting new members.
Yes, what we do is we have, I created an email template, and the vice president PR and the vice president membership are also a part of that process. And what we do is when we get an online inquiry through our website about a person who's interested in the club, one of the 3 of us responds back with that form letter, and we just or the form email. We just change, some of the wording around that needs to be changed around, inviting them to the club, and letting them know when the meetings are. If it's somebody who comes to, if it's a guest who comes to a meeting, the sergeant at arms always, or the Toastmaster, just like a regular Toastmasters meetings, make sure to greet the guests. We give them an opportunity to say why they've come to the meeting. What we also do is our vice president membership, Michael, he has developed a system in which he connects with the guest in chat, and we ask permission online. Is it all right if Michael reaches out to you during the meeting? They always say yes. And then Michael goes into the chat box and introduces himself and says, let me know what questions you have. And then he asks for their email information, any way to connect with them, and he follows up. And he always follows up with phone calls as well as emails. At the very end of our meeting, once we get to the end of our meeting, we always circle back and ask, what were the benefits that you will take into your life as a result of being at the meeting? What value did you find in our meeting that you'll apply to your life and to your speaking? And so those are some of the systems that we have in place.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jillian. That gives us some insight as to how we connect with our guest. And it seems that we are connecting with their guest very much with the same intent and thought process as we would in person. You just have to take a couple of extra steps. James, you have a comment or addition?
Maybe a follow-up question, because I've been trying to figure this out too. What about the dues aspect? How do you handle getting their first dues and getting that handled when it's all online completely?
Yes, that's a great question. Our treasurer, Donna, is wonderful with that. She sends out, we use Zelle, we also use PayPal and Venmo. And so she sends out a very succinct email that goes out to all of our members. What she goes a step further though, she gives a complete chart of who's paid and when they paid, so that the members are aware of what's going on and who has and hasn't joined or has joined.
Peer pressure.
Or recommitted. It seems to work. It seems to work. And she lets everybody know, what the deadlines are and how simple it is. She also has check methods, so people can do it that way if they want to go snail mail. And she's in regular contact with them. So we have a lot of contact with our members around this. I mean, not to the point of stalking, of course, but we're pretty consistent and we're pretty visible.
Nice.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think some of us get stalked anyways, even if it isn't on the online format. So thank you for that, Jolene. We have one additional question from the online, and it is a technical question coming from Elena. And on the iPad, I can only see 6 people at once and have to go to the camera function and switch from none to who's talking each speaker. In order to see the speaker, the 6 I can see are not any of the speakers.
Can you like scroll through them?
And I guess because it's an iPad, it might have a different view. Does anyone who uses an iPad have any?
The only thing I can say in regards to a recent meeting I was on was there seemed to be some limitations when it comes to an iPad as well as a tablet. And I know that's not a solution to the problem, but what I'm saying to you is it might not just be you. It might be more of a function issue from what I've heard.
And I guess on the phone, it only shows you one person at a time, so that would also be a functional issue. So it does depend on it does seem that it's a system that you're joining us or how you're joining the meeting that will allow you to view or not view people. So thank you, Carolyn, is it Carolyn Putt, for adding that additional confirmation about how the phone only shows one person at a time. So, all right, so I think that we've answered all of the questions. In case I've forgotten somebody, you can go ahead and chime in now. Take yourself off mute and chime in now, just to make sure that we get all of our final questions. And we are showing a yellow card, so we have probably another 2 to 3 minutes to finalize these, but I would like to get another question in.
I have a question for Jolene. For the online meeting, what percentage of the attendees usually do show their cameras? And do you have any protocol or preference over whether people show themselves or not?
That's an interesting question. Thank you for asking it. It's never occurred. I don't think it's ever occurred to us that people wouldn't, because they always have. So that answers your question. It's 100%. We've never had it be an issue that people haven't. And maybe it could too be because we are a digital club. What you're doing so courageously is you're adapting to a change. But we went out of the gate as an online club. It never occurred to us that people wouldn't be.
Thank you.
Sure.
Absolutely. And we had one more question. I apologize, I don't recognize you, but you are sitting in the photo. Yep, you just waved at me. Go ahead with your question, please. Can you just give us your name too? I can't hear you. Hold on a second. Maybe I have you muted. I'm still not getting you. All right, go ahead. Challenges of online. Do you want to go ahead and type in your question? Actually, I think I can hear you now. So, right. So there are quite a few comments in the chat. So if you have questions about Zoom or want additional information, there are some opportunities to look in our chat. Some people like Steve Garvin have talked about Zoom, the particular software system, how you can see some of those things and what they have for cameras. And then we are on our GoToMeeting, which we just don't want to confuse that we're talking about both of them. So GoToMeeting does have its own limitations, its own benefits, and you just kind of have to try and see what works for you. And I'm waiting for one more question, and I guess that is the biggest challenge in how we test out our systems, is whether or not you're able to hear and communicate and see those individuals as they come online. So we have the yellow card now. I apologize. There's one person who had a question, but I'm not able to see it. Jenny, can you see it? Or does anyone else see it in the chat? Okay, so I get a whole bunch of head no's. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up our question and answer. We want to thank everybody who's made comments. And again, in the chat, there is an opportunity for you to be able to look at all of those things. Oh, Eric Johnson. All right. So Eric has some issues with it crashing, being in Alaska. And Eric, we're going to get to you on a separate line. We're going to go ahead and just connect with you offline so that we can make sure that we research your question and not just give you a spout information that we have, because some of the questions do require some research and some intentional input into getting those. So we appreciate that. So we have had our presenters, which are Kyle Hall, Jolene Asker from our District 2, and James O'Farron. Thank you again very much for that. For those that are online with us, the whole 39 members that have connected and stayed online with us, we hope that this has been a beneficial format for you and that you've taken something away and you can give to your clubs. Yep, absolutely. So again, if you have any final chats as you go through the rest of the meeting, we're always open either at our Sound Advice website or on our chat so that you can leave questions or comments. And then we'll also have at the end of the meeting some other opportunities for you to make comments. With that completing and concluding our presentations and our question and answer, I will welcome our general evaluator, who is Mary Morrison. Welcome, Mary Morrison. Did I unlock you? Excellent, I can hear you, Mary. So Mary, I'm unable to hear you, and I've clicked. Is that you? Yeah, I can see that you're unmuted. You've been made a presenter.
One possibility is she didn't turn her mic on when she first logged in.
I can't hear you, Mary. Sorry. We might be having some connection issues, so if you look, it's a little choppy.
Thank you.
There you go, ma'am.
Thank you, Joanna. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Joanna. All right, perfect. It's great when a system works. I think it's incredible that we as a club, managed to promote this and have a number of guests who I hope you found this as useful as I did, as for beginning to next week. My guests. I show I am unmuted. I show I am unmuted. My mic is plugged in.
You are unmuted. You're just coming in.
I'm unmuted. Not hear me. Can you hear?
You're coming in choppy. Here you go, ma'am.
So sometimes does it help if some people turn off their cameras?
All right, so you can hear me?
We can hear you.
I took myself off video. Cannot hear me.
I can.
It almost looks like there's a lag.
Yeah, there is a lag.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, all. I don't think I'm going to be able to.
We can hear
I'm
you
sorry,
now.
what?
I am muting.
I'm coming in choppy? Yes. I seem to be having a problem.
Okay, so
Yes.
I've just muted
Yes.
everybody.
I've been in and out of this meeting multiple times, so sorry.
Nope, I can hear you perfectly now. I've muted everybody else.
You may want to move on. It frequently helps if people turn off their cameras. Okay. So thank you. I think we've had a remarkable meeting for having not a lot of time.
So I hate to do this, but we are going to move on. And it's always a positive thing when our club hears from Mary, but with the technical difficulties, I think it's more appropriate that we move on and work through these challenges. And this is just another example for us to be able to understand that sometimes things happen like this, and these are lessons learned, and as we move on. So if you, let me see. So Nick, can I get some comments from you, sir, since you've been observing and also making sure that I stay on track with my chat? Do you have any comments?
Comments for me. Hopefully you all can hear me and I don't have lag or anything.
You're good.
Okay, fantastic. I would say overall, it's absolutely fantastic. Another quality meeting. I was impressed by each of our speakers, particularly James. There was I guess what I would say is it was obvious that you do this work or work like this often, right? You were very much in your element, or you were comfortable. And one challenge that I have noticed with the difference, one of the major differences between being online and being in person, as you noted there, is you don't get a reaction and you can't really read the crowd. And so it takes someone to sort of just be confident and just go for it. And if your joke falls flat, you're not going to know. But if you are being received very well, you're not going to know. Either way, you have to go on the same. But this whole thing, this online meeting, this participating as an observer, it has to be practiced, I would say. And so I thought that Kyle's was absolutely fantastic in what he recommended in the different avenues, whether that be Zoom, whether that be Uber conference, whether that be what we're using now, GoToMeeting. It's exceptional there. I would encourage each of us to try these meetings or these different platforms with a friend or colleague or mom and dad or family member first before going to the big stage of putting on a meeting, because, well, if we have a guest and we're fumbling, that's doesn't really look well on us. But I think that goes without saying. Overall, fantastic meeting. Other than that, Joanna, I don't really have anything more to say as, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Nick, for that impromptu general evaluation.
Oh.
For our presenters, do you have any final comments that you'd like to share with us? Kyle, you haven't stopped doing that.
Doing what?
The slow
yeah.
into.
Sorry.
You're coming from the darkness all the way into the light.
I need a chair with a stronger back.
Yeah.
My final comment is we should treat this like the adventure it is and like the challenge it is. Let's embrace it and learn to use it.
Absolutely. And I echo that, as well as this is a process, not an event. It really is. So enjoy the ride, enjoy the process, and know that you have plenty of support out there. There's a whole online task force who can help you. And if you reach out to anybody in my club, I know that they will help you, and our officers will help you as well. You're not alone in this. The district is really here to support this endeavor so that we can all move forward and have a good time doing it.
Can I mention one other thing?
Absolutely, sir. Go ahead.
I was having a discussion with somebody today about this club's going online. And one second. All right. And one of the things I mentioned is if our club goes online, this creates a real opportunity for us to bring in guests who are not geographically in our area. I mean, I've invited all the friends I know in Squim to the Squim Club. They don't want to see me coming anymore. So, but now I could start inviting people who aren't in Squim to come to the Squim Club because we're going to be online.
All right, excellent. So,
There's a room for one more comment?
Absolutely, James.
This is something that was reminded. I ran out of room in my actual presentation for, but that Nick brought to mind, is that your own confidence in presentation is what makes it possible to engage with the camera and carry that momentum. One thing that helps a lot with that is your posture outside the frame of the camera, because we can see right here and you can do all these gestures right here, but you can't see where my feet are placed because I'm actually standing right now. And if I'm sitting down, I look like this because I have a standing computer desk. And if Kyle's in his chair, he leans way back and looks really creepy and spooky. But your posture, I always tell my club, your speech starts when you stand up out of your chair, and your approach to the lectern changes your mood and your attitude about how you approach your speech, and changes the expectations of the audience of you, and creates this contract of sorts with them of the kind of energy you're going to bring to it. When you're online, you have this frame, they can't see the rest, but that's a contract with yourself. When you approach the camera and you approach the screen, you are making a contract with yourself and changing your posture to change your own psychology to be more confident and engaged, even though the people aren't as able to reflect that engagement back to you. So it's a final tip that I found really useful. You're muted, Joanna.
I just saw I muted myself. So I will say that there are some lessons learned with this. Obviously, just understanding what your components are, some of what your limitations are, how you're joining the meeting, and then also the tasks that you have. I was the panel moderator, the Toastmaster, and then also had some assistance with looking at the chats and making sure, but I understand that I'm not looking directly at the camera. So there's a disconnect sometimes with having that. So there's some lessons learned that I'm taking away from this, and I appreciate everybody being flexible and joining us. And hopefully, again, it is about the learning process and the opportunity to expand the things and test new items that you're not really familiar with or comfortable with, and doing it in a safe environment where we are positive and constantly supportive of each other. So again, thank you for joining us. We will move on to the timers report. Lori's got her big red card up. She's like, wrap it up, girl. So Lori, Share your times, please.
Okay, so as best I could, I messed up on Kyle's. So I started showing the red card at like 10 minutes. And then my mom reminded me, no, it was 10 to 15. And so he was actually at 16:41.
Okay.
Jolene Ashker was supposed to be 8 to 10. She was at 16:03. And then James was going to be 5 to 10, and he was at 9 minutes. Our panel Q&A was 30 minutes and 55 seconds. And with Mary's difficulties, it was hard to start the clock. And so then I started it at the round robin. And we are at 10 minutes, including my timer's report. Does that work?
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am, for that. So we do have a few follow-up questions that are going on in the chat. And for those of you that are in the chat, we're going to try and make sure that we get to those, especially like the questions about advice on sharing an online contest. The district is actually putting something together, and area directors, division directors should be getting that in the next couple of days for a meeting and then expanding upon that. So I know quite a few of you probably came here wanting to know about online contest. We just don't have all of the information yet and where it's going to be put on, or whether or not we're even going to have contests this season. So the district is going to manage that, and I'll leave that to the trio because I don't want to overstep our bounds, because we're in support of the district. We don't speak for the, so we speak on behalf of them, but not for them. So, all right, that concludes our official portion of our meeting. I am turning over the responsibilities of the rest of the meeting to our club president. Welcome, Debbie Baker.